Hi, my name is Phil Colcord. I'm president of Fraternal Police Evergreen Lodge 1, located in Kitsap County. And this is our outreach program where we interview different law enforcement personnel in the county and also outreach services that are available from different organizations, from mental health to chemical dependency, you name it, we'll have them on our show. And the purpose of it is to give you, the citizens of our county, a knowledge of who to call if you're in need and you need a certain thing done. Today I have with me the pleasure and honor to have Sheriff John Gese. Hi, John. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for having me.
I think you go without introduction, but just a real short one anyway. Tell us, about yourself.
Sure.
For the newcomers.
For those who don't know me or haven't met me, my name is John Gese. I'm the Kitsap County Sheriff, and I was elected sheriff about a year ago. Prior to that, about a year before that, I was appointed sheriff when the former Sheriff Gary Simpson stepped down. Been with the department for 32 years. Prior to becoming sheriff, I was the undersheriff for 7 years. I've lived here in the community for well over 30 years, so that's me.
That's good. You know the community and you have plenty of experience in law enforcement.
That's right.
And we had you here before talk about things going on in the county and the Sheriff's Office involvement. Can you give us an update on what are the three major problems facing law enforcement?
Sure. No, I appreciate the opportunity to come back, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with our community some of the dynamic things that are going on in law enforcement in our community. Typically when I called to talk to groups about what's going on in my world anyway, like to talk about police reform, staffing, and crime rates. And starting with police reform, several years back, 2020, the George Floyd incident in Minnesota, lots of protests, lots of calls for action to do criminal justice reform, police reform, resulted in our state legislature here in 2021 introducing and passing 13 major pieces of legislation that really affected everything we do in law enforcement, whether it be hiring, firing, discipline, training, use of force, police pursuits, really dramatic changes. We've kind of rolled and adapted to some of these changes. Some of them still have not been fully implemented. Not on our part, but on the state part, actually. So it's still kind of a changing learning environment for us.
Let me be blunt on this, and this is my words, not yours. It basically crippled law enforcement as we knew it for going out and doing their job. And now I believe you're learning to work within the laws that are there. Laws are the tools by which police are able to do their job. If you take those tools away, well, you end up with some inadequacies. And that's where my opinion, that's where we are right now. Go ahead.
Sure, and I guess, my take on that is, first off, some of this change, it was driven to be, hold police more accountable, be more transparent. I like to think we were already doing a lot of the things that the laws were changed to require. And that had to do with our use of force, our training, police pursuits. All that, I believe, was already really ahead of the game as far as what was required under the law. Now, the law has made things dramatically different. It does hold police accountable. And I think one of the things that has been a challenge is not only me, but everybody in my agency would say, yes, hold police accountable. We should be transparent. But on the same token, when you're holding officers accountable, you have to give them the tools they need to do their job. You have to give them and allow them the ability to succeed and be able to do their job. And that's been a bit of a challenge, and there's been some challenges with that the last couple of years.
I can only imagine. I agree. Even in my time with the Sheriff's Office, we were held accountable for our action. And being held accountable and having irresponsible laws that or take away some things is not a good way to do it. I've said all along that good people want to obey the law. There's no problem. Evil people, the only thing that kept them under control was they were in fear of the police. Now, they don't fear the police anymore. In fact, some of them look at them as an opportunity for them to get notoriety and so forth. So we have no problem with being held accountable, but we need to be able to be effective out there.
Agreed. And the police pursuit law is a perfect example of that. You know, changed in 2021 to be very, very restrictive. The understanding was police pursuits are very dangerous. So the state response was, we'll only allow them in extreme cases. The bad news is for everybody who stole cars or burglarized residents, they knew right off the bat that they were not going to be held accountable and not going to be pursued. And we saw a pretty dramatic increase in auto theft rates, which I think had a direct correlation.
Something that hasn't been addressed yet, but I've heard it on the street from different people, good citizens. They're saying, the governor did me a favor because I don't have to get a license for my car anymore to renew the tabs, because if I get pulled over, I just keep going. They can't stop me.
Yeah, and I've heard it expressed a different way, saying, you know, unfortunately the people held accountable for traffic offenses and stuff are the ones who stop and obey the law, not the ones who
the other ones
leave.
don't. Yeah. I understand that too. So the police reform, I think we're on the same page. Yes, we need some police reform. Yes, we need to ensure that we have accountability, but we also need the leeway to get the job done and the tools to get the job done.
Yeah, and I would say to do the job the community wants us to do. And one thing I've found here in Kitsap County is our community is very responsive. We have good relationships with our community. I think we have that trust, and that comes from years and years of building that trust. And I think when I go out and talk to folks, that's what they want. They want us to have the proper tools to do the job, but use them wisely and be held accountable, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And then staffing. How is it going? I know last time we talked, you were not up to the standards that you're supposed to be, or where the allotment you have. How are we sitting today?
It's been a challenge the last couple of years, especially. I think it's getting better. In law enforcement, we've seen a wave of people who got hired in the 90s who have 25, 30 years on just retire. We're also seeing is, you know, folks that maybe have 20, 25 years would have originally stayed around another 5, that they're leaving the profession too. It's time they feel to retire. So we've seen a lot of turnover. In our department, we have about 270 members, including corrections officers and support staff. We've hired probably about 90 new people in the last 2 or 3 years. So a third of my staff has less than 3 years experience. And, you know, so we're spending a lot of time and resources recruiting people, hiring them, and then training them to bring up to speed. And, you know, and the challenge is you hire a deputy today, it's probably a year and a half before they're on their own, actually fully functional as a standalone deputy. But that doesn't take into account that we've been seeing decades of experience leave the agency, like detectives, search and rescue, SWAT, all those you know, programs are seeing dramatic turnover of staff. The good news is we are hiring a lot of great people. We're bringing in a very diverse group of people too. Our hiring standards are still high. And, you know, I'm excited to see all these new people come into our agency because they're coming with a heart for service. They want to do good. They want to serve their community. So it's really kind of been rewarding. But the overall effect is, yeah, we spend a lot of time and effort just trying to keep our staff, you know, hired and trained right now.
Oh, I can believe it. Yeah. Your standards are still high. I agree with that. But there's one little pet peeve I have. Simply, I used to get in trouble when my hair was over my ears. And now they got beards and mustaches. If you had one, it had to be short, you know. So you've got a lot more less restrictive in a lot of ways,
That's
too.
true, yes. We're trying to humanize ourselves a little bit, yes.
Okay. Crime rates.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on in that area, too. A lot of dynamics that I think, you know, there's a lot of things that affect crime rates in general, but you know, you throw in the pandemic, and we actually saw crime drop during the pandemic. Pandemic is over, and 22 was pretty much the first full year that it was over. We saw rates come up at least back to where they were, but some have gone quite a bit higher. Some of the violent crime is particularly concerning right now, like robberies right now for us is at a 10-year high. Aggravated assault, which could include, assault with weapons or even DV crimes, domestic violence crimes, they're up too to a 10-year high. So some concerning things, and we're seeing, young people who are solving their disputes not with fists anymore, but with guns, and it's concerning.
Oh, I imagine it is. I'm going to throw you out a theory I have is that drugs. I've worked drugs for many years, and I never met anyone that purposely got on drugs, and I never met anyone that really wished they'd never been on drugs. And I also know that drugs cause the people to get desperate because they can't afford their next fix, and they got to have that fix because that's basically their God. That's what they live for. And so they turn to crime, and they turn to violent crime, And we're going to talk about the law that's coming up that's going to make it criminal to some degree, and I think that's a good start. But, the sad part is you got someone OD, say, and you give them that Narcan, and you bring them back, and then you offer them to put them into a rehab, get you some help, and take you. Majority of them don't want to go. They stay on the street. And so you have no tool in which, back in my day, if it was a danger to themselves or to others, you detained them. And I think that needs to be in effect, that you detain them, because that person that doesn't want to go with you, after he gets straight, is going to thank you. Majority of them. A few are going to go back, but the majority of them will thank you. So that's, we need the crime rate dropped. One way to do it is get these people help. Help for mental health, help for...
And I would agree. And I think, again, with any complex problems, you need a lot of pieces to the solution. I think what people have felt the last couple of years is police shouldn't be part of that solution, right? Drugs is a behavior health problem, an addiction issue. It's not a crime issue. But like you say, you worked during the 80s and 90s, and you can probably remember how much crime was tied into drugs back then.
When we did Crush, we took 349 drug dealers off the street. A lot of them were low level, some were high level. And for 3 months, our crime rate, burglary or robbery, everything dropped. And then after that, the drugs were reestablished and crime went back up. Yeah, there's a real correlation between the people doing drugs and the crime rate.
There is, and when we arrest people for possession of drugs, we want them to get help. I mean, that hopefully solves the problem, right? But it's tough, and there's not a lot of resources out in our community for that right now. Yeah. And even if police want to divert people to drug treatment programs,
there's no place for them.
There's still not a lot of capacity. Yeah, it's a real problem.
And that's well, I think I'm nobody, but I would like to see, instead of throwing all this money into homelessness, and homelessness is bad, throw the money into mental health facilities and rehab places that are going to keep them, because the homeless, you just supply more housing, it's just going to have more homeless. It's not a solution to the problem. The root of the problem is they need to face, and that's the...
Yeah, and I hate to... it's probably not fair to classify all homeless people in the same category, because we do have actually families that are homeless.
Oh, I know that.
But you're right. There's a portion of that population that, they're suffering from mental illness or addiction issue or both, and those resources just, they really need to be out there. And right now, if we find somebody who is addicted to drugs and wants help right now today, we don't have a place to take them. And that's tough on the officers. It's tough on our community. It's a problem.
Oh, I agree completely. I don't have the solution. But people are working at the solution, like you and your department, and
Yeah, and I see good programs out there, community programs that we work with that are coming online. And you mentioned, we have programs we work with that have formerly addicted people that are in the programs trying to help other people who are addicted. And even they'll will tell you that, maybe police and arrest isn't the proper response for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's their only chance to actually put a stop and maybe get some help. So.
Well, that's like, I'm hoping this new law that's coming in. You want to tell us a little about that, and then we'll talk about that a little bit.
Sure. It wasn't actually a planned response to police reform in 21, but what happened is our state Supreme Court made a ruling in the Blake decision, as it's called, which basically ruled that our drug law that we had in Washington State for decades was unconstitutional because it didn't require that you knowingly possess drugs. And so the state legislature, which was already dealing with all this other police reform, was left with a choice. They could do nothing, and then hard drugs like methamphetamine, cocaine would have become essentially legalized, or they would have to pass a bill. And they chose to pass a bill, but it was a temporary fix. It was a 2-year bill that was due to sunset this summer. And that law, unfortunately, was not, I don't think, well thought out. It required law enforcement to contact people 2 or 3 times before they could potentially make an arrest. It was very hard to keep track of what was required. Again, it didn't have a lot of the resources necessary to do the diversion stuff. So this last legislative session, the legislature dealt with this, and it was an extremely controversial issue. And during the session, the regular session, they could not come up with a solution. So they were called back into special session by the governor because the governor did want some sort of solution. And they did come up with a bipartisan bill that basically kicks in August. And what that law does is it makes hard, dangerous drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, it makes it a gross misdemeanor to knowingly possess or to use that in public spaces. So it does give us in law enforcement back the ability to make an arrest for those possessions or use situations. It encourages local law enforcement to divert people to treatment. Again, we're willing and able to do that, but we have to have those programs to divert them to. And it also requires the prosecutor to offer them an opportunity to get drug treatment. So it's a new law. It'll be interesting to see how it works. I do intend to use it as a tool that was given to local law enforcement to address issues like open drug use in parks and streets and stuff. I do want to use it for that. But we'll have to see how it progresses. And, whether it helps people get into treatment, I hope so. But again, to help people get into treatment, you have to have those programs.
Yeah. I've interviewed our local county mental health people, and they're working diligently to get those laws and the facilities. And, what I'd like to see is that the people, the community, pushes the legislators to make that a priority so that when you go and got someone that you need to put in rehab, you got someplace you can put them,
And I agree, and that's why opportunities such as this are so important for people to really understand what's going on. And solutions, again, big solutions require a lot of work, and there's a lot of great community groups working right now to kind of come up with solutions. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. What are some good things that are happening in the sheriff's office?
Well, some good things is, first off, yes, we're having a staffing issue, but what I'm seeing is, again, a wonderful group of people coming into our organization that have a lot of enthusiasm. They're willing and want to serve the community. A lot of great, it's just had a tremendously good impact on our culture, which I think has already been good. The other good things is, all of us local law enforcement agencies are in the same boat. So it's really forced us to work together collaboratively, and that's right now happening at a level I haven't seen for years. So really excited about how that's working. Other good things about, even though we're seeing this rise in violent crime, my deputies, my detectives, they're out there, they're focusing on those, and they're making arrests. You know, they're bringing and holding those people accountable, and the prolific burglars and criminals. We're focusing on that, and we're making some good arrests, and we're bringing those people in and holding them accountable. So I think there are some good things happening at the Sheriff's Office.
That's good. How's the jail staff going there? Last I heard, you're full to capacity and more, and very busy.
Yeah, we are busy, and you know, the jail staff, you know, they're working overtime a lot. You know, we're hiring more corrections officers. We're actually drawing in corrections officers from other agencies as well, but they're still struggling, and you know, it's a very vulnerable population in the jail. You have the majority of folks who are suffering some addiction, mental health, or serious medical conditions, or a combination of all three. So it's a very vulnerable population right now.
And when they're in your custody, they're your responsibility.
Absolutely. As soon as they walk in their door, they're 100% our responsibility. So yeah, so and our officers are very professional, and they're doing a good job. It's harder to hire corrections officers than deputies. There's just not as many people applying. You know, I think we have currently 2 or 3 openings for deputies, but 8, I think it is, for corrections officers. So we need good candidates. It's a tough job, but it's a rewarding job because you do make a difference.
Good. Anything that you'd like to add?
No, other than, you know, I think it's really important, and I've been trying to talk to groups and do things like this, and, you know, to really tell our story in law enforcement, tell our story here at the Sheriff's Office, share with our community where we're at. You know, one of the things I've been expressing is, you know, I mean, we are a growing community. We can see it everywhere in all of our neighborhoods. We can see it on the street with more cars and more traffic. The demand for services is always high. It's getting higher. And keeping pace with the growth of the county, crime rates, and all the demands for services that people expect of us is going to be a challenge. And I'm going to have to work with our communities to see how we best address that in the future.
Yeah. It's a community effort to bring success. So I understand what you're going through to some degree because I was there, but I think you have a lot more difficult than I did in my career, and our thoughts and prayers are with you because, you know, and I think you need it, and I hope the whole community understands that, and their thoughts and prayers are with you too. I want to thank you for coming, and you're welcome back anytime. Just let me know if you got something you want to tell the community. That's what we're here for.
Sure.
So,
I appreciate
thank you.
it, Phil. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
And that concludes our show for today with Sheriff John Gese. To the public out there, pay attention, get involved. We need all the help we can because this problem's only going to get worse unless the community sticks together and gets what we need to have the resources for mental health and for chemical dependency items. So thank you very much, and we'll see you down the road.